So we're going to change course a little, and you just heard about the technology trends. So Navaneet and I will look at how this is affecting our careers, and we'll sort of map what kind of roles were in demand across different technology trends, and what clients are really looking for, what skills do we need to bring on board. And to keep me honest, Navaneet will give you a few examples of what we're delivering for clients today and what kind of roles we are staffing. And then we'll have a little thoughts that we'll share about what we think is the expertise that is most relevant for the next, say, a year or two in this space. So with that, let me say I'm very young, but then I started with mainframes too. So around the time, the late 80s or early 90s, it was all about knowing new languages. You know, you could have started with COBOL. It was the coolest thing to do then was to move to DB2. And then came the C and the C++ era. And the Java world was a huge revolutionary thing. And if you knew Java, then you were in great demand in the market. So the mainframe and the client service era always looked at moving from language to language. And in the background, of course, there was the need for managing scale on mainframe. You had to understand the architecture. But the bulk of the demand was more around learning new languages, right? And then as we moved on to the 90s, the big buzz was around, did you know ERP, did you know CRM? So it was the packaged solutions era. And if you were a CRM expert, an ERP expert, you were in great demand. So what really changed was not just knowing languages in a few technologies, but also understanding some of the functionality and implementing things out of the box. Then came the internet era. So the client server took the next step of moving outside the enterprise. So you needed security architects. You needed integration architects who could connect across multiple technologies. Every application spoke a different language. It was on a different platform and different kinds of protocols. So when you integrated these, you needed a whole new range of skills to be able to do that successfully, and also constantly address if your data was secure, if it was leaving your organization, what are the different kinds of patterns that you would apply so that your response time is good. So that brought in the performance engineering team also in great demand. So what's changing now when we talk about cloud? We are still using applications, or we are building new applications on the cloud. We're doing packaged implementations on the cloud. So what really changes? So let's take a quick look at where the simplification is happening and how much of some of these complexities are now being addressed by the SaaS providers themselves. So if you see from platform as a service to software as a service, this shift is huge. Most of the things are within the control of the SaaS providers. And what does that mean? Your network architecture, your development environments, your security architecture, your mobility architecture, all of these are addressed already. We are pretty much out of the box. So does that mean that we now have to move from working for, say, system integrators to software developers? Are these jobs going away? And if they are moving, then isn't the demand coming down as well? Because a software as a service provider needs much lesser number of people to cater to a larger number of clients. You know, if you're doing production support for, say, 50 clients, and you have a huge team working across multiple technologies, imagine doing a CRM implementation from one single code base for, say, 200 clients. How many people do you really need, and what kind of skills do you need? Isn't that getting simplified? So are the number of jobs coming down with more of SaaS adoption? So to answer that, let's look at what clients are looking for and how the demand for skills are changing. So take a few requirements that the CIO is addressing. So, and which part of it gets covered within a software as a service product, and what kind of roles are moving away from being in great demand to being simplified. It's not really going away entirely in many cases. For example, if you take the need for scalable solutions, then software providers are now building solutions on the cloud, which means it can easily scale, and you're again using a pay-as-you-go model. So these things are out of the box. It is available. So the performance engineering part and the scalability part, a lot of the technical architecture work that you do are all now about planning and configuring and solutioning. You don't have to do too much work there. So the technical architect still has a job, but then it is much simplified, and he need not spend several months. It might be just a couple of weeks or days in the initial rollouts, and over a period of time, not even required. So there's a need for high availability. Again, this is the promise of a software as a service provider, and it's not something that we really need to spend a lot of time planning and designing as we do the architecture work. All you need to know as a technical architect now are what are the limitations, what kind of licensing are you signing up for, how do you implement solutions when your business is scaling, what more do you need to do. So there is a need to understand how this is addressed and to solution it, but nothing beyond. Ease of use, look and feel. Now this is a key driver for rapid adoption of software as a service solutions. A lot of the applications are extremely intuitive. It's gadget based, like how you see on your cell phones these days. So even your online applications are coming to your mobile devices. It's much more simplified. You're moving away from the modular solutions to very intuitive solutions. So if you had to build something like this, the concepts or the frameworks that you had to apply as a technical architect is now actually standardized and implemented. So again, you do not have to worry too much about this, but you have to see how to apply this when you're building solutions. So for example, user experience. There are a whole lot of functionality available. It's all about which ones do I need to use, and the decision is more around how do I do something very rapidly, right? So the business analyst also has to have a wider understanding of what is out of the box when they are capturing the requirements, because they can also quickly decide how to build applications that are much more simplified because things are pre-existing. Now, there is a constant need to lower your spend, and the biggest advantage here is you can do things much faster because a lot of things are already pre-done and available. You just have to log in and you get your dev environment, you get your production environment all set up, and the environment planning phase is shrinking or almost non-existent in some of the smaller implementations. So again, you don't need too many people planning for sizing and infrastructure. Those roles are now coming to the technical architects. They can do it themselves. Another example. It's all about reuse. So the power of SaaS is it is not asking clients to completely transform their business overnight and throw away what is existing and move to something new, but it really lets them do it incrementally, right? So you can experiment. So Saideep covered several examples of the different approaches clients are taking. So that's what is a reality now. So with that, again, the technical architects or the role is now to see how to be creative in terms of holding on to your existing implementations and moving bits and pieces onto the cloud or to a SaaS kind of an application, but in a very simplified manner, right? Because the environment supports you to take those decisions. But what does this mean? There is a lot of opportunity for an integration architect to now step in and work on keeping both of them up and running simultaneously. So now let's look at the CEO's priorities. It's about faster time to market, higher return on investment. So the roles that now come into play are the need for a business analyst to understand how to do this much faster, or a technical architect to understand what business needs and to provide an implementation approach that can be out there in 2, 3, 5 weeks, right? So it's less to do with, I will look at the functional design and come up with a cool technical architecture and sit with the development team and test and give it away. You have to be closer to business now. So faster time to market, again, the roles that you have to notice here that are coming to play more closely with the development team and the client is managing change. So you have to understand the as-is process, you have to move towards the to-be process, you have to work closely with the business analyst, the technical architect, the development team, and all these are happening simultaneously. Because a lot of the packages give you best of breed solutions, and that is pretty much out of the box. So it's not about knowing one particular ERP or CRM product anymore, it's about being able to apply it very quickly. So with that, let's look at what kind of projects we are implementing today and what kind of roles are really relevant in some of our projects. Over to you, Navaneet.
Am I audible? Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Shanthi. If you had any questions about why those images were there on all those slides, you can park it for the Q&A. Shanthi will answer them.
Thanks. He put all the effort, so he wants you to be curious.
Right. So to introduce myself, I'm Navaneet. I have about 15 years of experience in IT. I've been with Accenture for the last 8 years. I've done multiple packaged application implementations. I've been working in software as service and cloud for the last 3 years. And my primary role in Accenture is I solution architect for SaaS technologies. And I really love my job. The reason why I love my job is I'm presented with a business challenge almost every day in terms of what the client is expecting in terms of whether they should go for SaaS, whether they should adopt, what kind of technologies that they should be using, whether they will get the real value that they are looking for. So my job is to basically see how we can address this challenge, and I work with some of the best people in our company to solve the problem. Right. So Shanthi spoke about what are the SaaS offerings and what are the kind of skills that the SaaS vendor brings to play, and what are the skills that the SIs will be further doing. To extend that part of the conversation with some client examples, the first one here is about a large high-tech company who are into manufacturing the storage devices, and they had their inside sales organization, and they were growing massively over the last few years. And one of the challenges that they found within their inside sales organization was the systems that they were using, at least the CRM system that they were using, was not meeting to their current needs. When they mentioned that it was not meeting to their current needs, it was the leads were going amiss. They were not able to do their accurate pipeline management, forecasting. Their systems were outdated. They were having a global footprint. And every geography had a different system in place, and they were not having standardized processes, and all of this was a challenge. So what we had to do was a common CRM system. That's what we had to build, and we had to build it in such a way that we had a higher user adoption, because the current system, just because of the technical challenges it was having, the users were not using the system. They were doing a lot of manual tracking, and they wanted a new system should be very intuitive, and the client had to invest less in terms of training, and were able to get it up and moving in a very short span of time. So the approach we used was a phased model, wherein during the first phase of the implementation, we tried to attack what are the key challenge areas. One of them obviously was their lead management, and there were a lot of challenges in terms of how the leads are coming, from where they are coming, whether it's from a direct channel, indirect channel. So we had to put all those processes in place. And then, so the first phase has basically had the lead, account, and contact management. That's what we went live with. And then we evolved the solution to cater to, say, opportunity and pipeline management solution. And the third phase, what we did was to integrate whatever solution that we built to their existing infrastructure or their on-premise systems to get an end-to-end seamless kind of an experience to the client. Further, what we did was to take that solution and roll it out to multiple geographies. So we had to roll this out to multiple countries, around 4 different regions. And when we did this, we had to also look at what is the localization that is required. So 80% of the solution was standard, and 20% of the solution, be it with regarding to their currency or with regarding to their languages or just with regarding to their processes, what had to be customized. And this particular thought process of what is standard and what has to be localized or what has to be specific for the geography, that thought process had to go in right at the beginning, not when we are supposed to localize. So that was the key. And what did we achieve out of all of this? We were able to get more productivity from their sales reps or their partners, because they can focus on their job on their hand. They focus on what is key for them, that is to sell. They need not worry about whether the system will give them the support that they are looking for. We also created a centralized view, apparently because they had multiple systems in place and they wanted to standardize their customer data. So we had to bring all of this data into one single repository, and in this case, we had to use an MDM system and then have it synchronized with Salesforce.com. That's what we did. And then we had to bring more mature lead management process. When I said lead management process, you can imagine we had to write almost close to, say, 50,000 assignment rules on top of the platform, catering to various needs as to how does a lead gets routed to the right person, and how quickly are we able to respond to the lead. So that was one of the key metrics that was used to measure the success of this particular program. And then we had to see how we are going to get the right kind of user adoption. What kind of training programs are we going to do? How much are we going to do the train the trainer? How much are we going to spend the time with the end users? So these are the skills that were broadly brought to fore. Obviously, we needed the industry experience. We cannot go into this particular program and say that, oh, your CRM should look like this, you had these problems, or your partner relationship management should happen this way. We had to bring what is relevant for this particular industry. What are the other clients doing, and what is the best in process in terms of addressing their issue. And then we had to get the right kind of CRM and PRM mix on the team, the functional guys, and then the change management expertise in terms of building the training content, in terms of bringing in the organizational change that was required, working very closely with the business and the IT teams. And then we also needed a technical architect who was part-time but was very critical during the design decisions, because we are really talking about somewhere in the scale of 8,000 to 10,000 users across the globe, right? So how are we going to build the scalable kind of a system? What are the design decisions that we need to take, and which are the ones we need to make some trade-offs? That was what was critical to be done, and that's when the technical architect helped us. And then we had the developers who were the full-time roles, and we are also talking about huge volumes of data here. So how do you bring that on within the cutover window that we had while we are going live? So those were the skills which were important on this particular program. This we did for a global card, basically a card provider, a credit card provider, and they had a existing PHP based application which was hosted, and they had a lot of issues with that. In terms of, they had a site, but then if they had to even go and change a text, if they had to go and change an image, they had to work with their IT teams, and they had to go through the entire IT process to make it work. So they wanted something much more nimble, much more easy, much more intuitive, and something which will help them address their core issues. And when I'm talking about core issues, it is about our core needs. They are talking about, if I log into the website of this particular card provider and I am one of their subscribers, I should get localized information. I should be able to see who are the merchants who are associated to me and what are the services that they are providing, and on which of their products and services that I get benefit as being one of their card members. And this information had to come to them, and the promotion data will keep changing, or the merchant data will keep changing. So all of this information, the business team didn't want to go to their IT team to make it happen. So how did we solve this problem? So we use the latest and the greatest provided by Salesforce.com, that is Siteforce, and we built the entire application using mostly out of the box what is provided by the Siteforce technology, which is on HTML5. The advantage being here is that once it is on HTML5, it was also, we built the application in such a way that it allowed us to access the application even through a mobile device, right? And what the administrators, not really the IT people, the administrators had the control of really deciding as to what is the content, who are the merchants, how do they get access to this particular information, and then it was rolled out. And since this application was being used by the end users, that is, we are really talking about B2C here, so we wanted this application to look really good. It has to be some of the best in class web application that we had built, so we needed to get the right kind of user experience. So what were the kind of skills that were required? And one more point which I wanted to cover here was, this was integrated with Google. When I say Google, basically if a person goes and says that this is my zip code, automatically it will kind of pull out in terms of what are the various pins on the map, and it will tell you who are the merchants who are around and what are the promotions. So it had that integration. So just to talk in terms of what are the skills that were required, it required CRM platform experience, because you needed to understand CRM to do this, because it was campaigns at the end of the day, but then it was essentially built on a platform. So we were using the Force.com database to get all the data that was required with relevant to, say, merchant information, their product information, or the pricing information, all of that which was stored on their Force.com database, but the UI, if I can call it that way, was on Siteforce, right? So we also needed to get a technical architect part-time, because this was the first time we were doing this kind of an implementation, and it was probably one of the first Siteforce implementations that was done globally, right? So we needed to know in terms of what goes in and what shouldn't go into this particular solution, and where we didn't want to make it too complex. The reason being, we delivered this solution within 8 weeks' time. And I did speak about the user experience expertise, and then we had our developers and also people who can do the interface and the conversion jobs. When I'm talking about the interface and conversion jobs, it's about getting the merchant, product, and the other information onto the system. Moving on to the next case. So we spoke about Salesforce automation, we spoke about campaign management. Now going into the social and the collaboration aspect. So I'll pick two cases here. The first one is basically a global life sciences client of ours. This client has been working with us for many years, and we have a very good relationship. So they had a application which was based on Plumtree, and where they basically did all their communities, portlets, their content, all of that was residing on on a legacy application. Again, they had quite a lot of challenges, not a scalable platform, not giving information in terms of having it on time, and they wanted to also make it in terms of very simplified in terms of interaction, and a basic and a personal experience or personalized experience was one of the themes of this particular client. So what we did was, we built this entire application on Force.com and Chatter. So many a times when we build this application, particularly when people who know about Chatter is out of the box. But here we had to customize quite a lot, and I'll talk about it in a little detail. So what did the client want to see? The client wanted to see their training calendars, the upcoming events. They wanted to see about what are the calendars of each of the people, many other things. And they didn't want everyone to be doing everything, because once you open up Chatter, people can just keep moving data across or keep sharing data across without much governance or control being there as part of what is required in that organization. So here, as an end user, when I log into the system, I will be able to only subscribe to a specific group. Suppose I belong to an oncology group. So I will be able to only get information which is relevant to oncology. What are the brands, what are the products that I need to go as a medical rep and have to go and promote. Only relevant information. If I go and try and subscribe to some other group, the system will not allow. If I have to, the groups were again controlled and added in terms of how the administrators add that control. Suppose I, as an end user, got some, say, a lead or an information from or some material, and I want to publish it on Chatter. It had to go through an approval process. It didn't directly get published to everyone in the community. Rather, it went through an approval process, and once it is approved, then it was published. So we had to put in those controls as part of the organization's need, but yet make it very seamless and personalized. So that's what we did. The second case is about a global insurance company. Now, this insurance company was into non-life. So what they wanted to do was give their end customers, that is, if I take this insurance product, then I get some kind of a personalized experience. When I say personalized experience, I get messages on my device, that is either on an iPad or an iPhone or any other device, saying that it is going to be winter, so go and get a battery checked, right? Or see if things are working fine on your car, something like that. Or your insurance is going to expire in so many days. Why don't you go and renew it, right? Or some other cases wherein if I'm on the road and my car breaks down and I want to place a request, so I can place a request directly from this particular application. And immediately I'll get to see all the Chatter feeds in terms of the agent responding to you within a certain SLA. That is, he will come back to you in terms of what actions they took. One, they will say that someone is going to come and assess your damage, right? He's also going to come, they are also going to say that I have booked a rental car for you. It is going to come within this specific time, right? And so on and so forth. So basically you are trying to make it as intuitive as possible and give them the right, and basically in this particular customer scenario, they were lacking this. They had a lot of complex systems available within their infrastructure, but they didn't have applications which were needed by their end customers. So they wanted to build this application to give the right kind of user experience and promote the kind of products and services they had within their organization. So the kind of skills that we required, again, we needed to get the best of industry experience, platform expertise. When I say change management, if you look at the agent console that we built, we needed to change the way the agents worked, because they were used to supporting their clients in a certain way. They probably used to get a call. They probably were never used to get a call on time. But here now they had to respond quickly. So how do we make it happen? Right? What kind of trainings that we had to provide and what kind of education that we needed to do. And then, because this particular application, at least the second one, was built entirely on an iOS platform, so what kind of messaging that we had to do? What kind of APIs we had to use? Was it going to be RESTful APIs that we had to do, or can we do it using SOAP? Right? So we had to make those kind of decisions, right? And then we had our developers and the interface experts. Going on. So Two more case studies. So I spoke about campaigns, I spoke about social. The direct sales agent or the rep would have information about what are the various services that the client or the customer, the individual, has already procured from your organization, and then what are the other associated products that he can go and sell. Or it could be a case that he wants to go and win back that customer. The customer recently dropped off from your account, or he no longer wants your service, but he wants to go and say that, hey, you had a problem with us, but I can go now fix it for you. Right? So in this case, what we had to do was we had to build this entire territory and turf management, wherein turfs were assigned to individuals. We had to literally go and say that this is the location for you, this is the entire turf, and we had to make it easy because the administrators or the guys who are sitting in the head office will say that this particular turf belongs to this particular guy. And automatically once the turf gets assigned to the person, then he will have about 100 or 150 people in his turf, and he knows whom to go and which door to knock. Furthermore, this particular application, when it was available on their iOS device, it used to constantly send messages back into the head office system, which was on Salesforce and Force.com, and say that this guy is at this particular location. This guy has gone and met so many people, and this guy has got so many orders because he was filling in all this information real time. Moving on to the next case, we are talking about a global life sciences company. How many of you know Viva? Has anyone heard of Viva? You know Viva. Okay. So I'll explain what is Viva. So we have spoken about various technologies here. At least we spoke about infrastructure, platform, and the application, and mostly I've spoken about application platform. There are also industry verticals. So we have an industry vertical called Viva, which was earlier called Vertical on Demand, which caters to specific Salesforce automation requirements of a life sciences client. So all the automation in terms of who are the doctors, who are the hospitals, who are the pharmacists that he has to go and meet, how does he do the entire call planning exercise, from his pre-call planning to the call execution to post-call, how does he debrief, all of that. So, and the entire system is automated, and this is what is Viva. So why did we implement Viva here? The client again had a CRM system or multiple CRM systems again, different processes, multi-country rollouts, all of that. But they didn't have a standard way of tracking this sales effectiveness or their field force effectiveness. So we had to bring in a standardized software, and we couldn't build all this application right from on the platform. It was just not feasible. It would have taken too long. So we had to use something which was out of the blocks or which is available right in the App Exchange. So Viva was available on App Exchange, and we knew it was best of class. So we went and implemented this. And the other challenge that the client faced was there was no mobility for their field force. That is, they had to go back to their home, they had to go back to their offices at the end of the day and then enter all the call data, which meant that they never did. Right? So what we had to do was to enable that same application. In fact, Viva provides out of the box tablet application. So we had to make sure that we got the right kind of information onto the tablet application. So what kind of skills we required? So again, here we are talking about life sciences, we are talking about a cable company. So we needed to have the right kind of industry experience. Otherwise we wouldn't have been successful. The second application that we rolled out was for close to 8,000 users. A very large implementation. And probably it was one of the most pioneering implementations for Viva. So we had to get the right kind of the CRM expertise and the change management and the adoption that was required. And we had to get the right kind of technical architecture in place. We are talking about a very complex system which had multiple interfaces and also in terms of Some of these particular applications also had the case wherein we had to build a lot of mashups in terms of using their existing application and bringing it onto, say, force.com platform. So we had to build all of that. So we required the right kind of technical architecture in place. And then user experience, followed by mobility experts. Now, in case of the first example, that is in the cable company, we were building a native mobile app, which was on iOS SDK. So we needed to get the right kind of skills. So typically when we are talking about a SaaS practice, people who work on cloud, we are really talking about people who know the platform, who know, say, Visual Force or an Apex or that kind of languages, but we don't have mobility experts. So we had to bring the right kind of experts because that's the demand. And then we had the developers and the rest of the skills that was needed. Moving on. Hope I'm not dozing off people. So are there any more skills? Are there any more things which are applicable in terms of making a project successful? That's again a key question. Are there any people who are working behind the scenes who make a project successful? Right? So one of them, environment management. So environment management, as you understand, in many of the SaaS applications which is there, it's almost like point and click. You go and say, click, I say, I want a development sandbox. I want a configuration sandbox. I want a full sandbox. It is readily available. Sometimes it takes hours to set it up, but then it is generally available. You don't have to do much. But is it as simple? It may not be. The reason being, there are multiple factors that play to get the right kind of environment approach. I'll start from bottom and then go to top. One is about your org strategy. When I talk about org strategy, how many instances, production instances do I need to have within my organization? One is about your affordability, obviously. That starts with there. But then, what is your real need? Will your sales and service organization align to one single process? Will they march to the same drum beat? Will they be able to align the core processes which are standard for both the organizations? When you are, say, you are going to have one release, you are going to have incremental releases for one of the organization. If there is a downtime for the other organization, are they willing to wait? If one of the organization is going to ask for changes, how long will it take for the other organization to approve it if it is going to impact them? So all of these have to go into consideration when you are talking about an org strategy. We are at a point where we are not really at a nascent stage. We are at an advanced stage of SaaS. In many of the customers that we work for, they have multiple instances of Salesforce.com, multiple instances of other SaaS products that are there. So we are at a point wherein we are helping them make decisions like where do you consolidate and when is consolidation applicable for them and what does it take to consolidate. You have built all those applications. The applications could have been built because of various companies that they have acquired over a period of time. Or it could just be a case wherein different divisions within the organization went and invested on a SaaS on their own. But they never had standard processes. They didn't standardize within their own company. So how do you merge them? It is never a simple answer. And to do an org consolidation itself is a complex exercise. There are multiple factors that go into it. So an org strategy is always key and very important decision making that every environment manager or a release manager or a deployment manager needs to understand this. Then we are talking about source control. It is not like the earlier world, right, where you had all your, say, Java classes, you had your PL SQL scripts and all that. It used to reside in your systems and you used to use a BSS tool or whatever to do your version control. Here now you have other kind of tools which are available. Some of them like JIT, SVN, CVS. There are multiple tools which you can use to do source control. But again, with regarding to source control, some of them can be controlled, some of them cannot be controlled. The ones which can be controlled are those which have metadata APIs. So if you have a metadata API, then you can track the version and you can control it. And particularly, you require a source control when you are having multiple development teams which are working on same piece of code, and you need to have it. And sometimes, in case of a SaaS world, it's always overlooked. A source control tool is never there because everyone believes the code is residing in the cloud. But it is very essential to have one. Right? And then the final part of it is with regarding to code propagation and automation. That is, how does the code move? Whether it moves from dev to config, what is the path that you are going to follow? Right? So all this has to be configured and set up. And it is particularly essential in case of agile deployments. When you are following an agile methodology, how do you build continuous integration? I complete my code, I write my Apex class, I do a save, and I push it into my source control tool. It has to automatically go and get promoted into my next environment, and it is available for testing. How do I make it happen? Right? So those are the kind of considerations that you need to make when you are talking about environment management. And did you guys feel that we missed a trick? We never had testers on any of our earlier slides. They are the flavor of the town. They are always there. So testing will never go out of
fashion.
Go out of fashion, right? Yeah. So all the SaaS providers provide the promise that auto upgrades are there, and auto upgrades are there, and they really work. So you need not make those significant investments in terms of you build a customization, you have to redo that customization on. In my earlier world, wherein I used to work on on-premise packages, when there was an upgrade, it was a 6 months process of getting all your customizations working on the next version. But here it might not be the same case, but it is still a best practice to do regression testing to make sure that all your customization that you have built, is it working or not when you move into the next release or next upgrade that a SaaS provider provides. You are also talking about the user experience and cross-border compatibility, particularly when you are using some kind of scripting like Java scripting and other things. It is essential to make sure that you know what are the browsers that the client is going to use and make sure that the application is working across all of them. Next, in terms of mock conversions and performance, this is again very essential because we really are talking about a world wherein we are what Saideep mentioned, we are recently completed a deployment for a $130 billion company. The process is very complex, the data volumes are huge. So how do you make sure that you meet the cutover window? What are the steps that you need to take? How do you get the data into the platform on time? So you need to do multiple rounds of testing, multiple rounds of mock conversion, and also make sure that some of the changes that are required on the platform to make sure the conversion goes through fast. There are some tips and tricks. Probably Nikhil will cover that in his session. Then we are talking about tablet and native applications, so what kind of testings that are required. And finally, in terms of simulation, when we are talking about SaaS providers, you are also talking about the ecosystem, right? You never build everything from scratch. There are ecosystem partners, there are applications which are available. So you take them and you implement them on your platform. So how do you make sure that those things are tested correctly? So these are some of the key aspects. I will not try to go too much into detail about integration because that is one dedicated session that we have. So Nikhil will address them in detail. But some of these things in terms of how do you integrate with your on-premise application or cloud-based application, mobility, what kind of tools that are required in terms of your ESB or ETL tools, what kind of design patterns, how do you apply security, all of this will be covered in detail. Finally, I hand it over back to Shanthi. So what are the skills in demand?
Thanks, Navaneet. So I hope that sort of clarifies that I was unnecessarily creating a panic about our jobs going away. So one thing that you would have noticed is we are doing very innovative solutions in a very short time frame. And the number of skills that you saw for each project were quite varied. So what's really different in the SaaS world is not that the roles are going away. Some roles get simplified. And tying it back to the iceberg diagram that Jim showed you earlier, the scope is shrinking. But then what it means for some of us is that we need to double up and wear multiple hats. So as a technology architect, you need to understand a wider range of technical architecture, maybe across mobility, maybe a little of the user experience. If your custom solution, if you came from a Java world, then you also need to know a little bit of portal, a little bit of integration, a little bit of mobility concepts now to take quick decisions, because these are, some clients are doing tactical implementation, some are doing pilots, some are doing full-blown rollouts. So in large engagements, these experts come full-time. In some of the short duration engagements, which are more tactical in nature, you're probably required just part-time. And so the pressure on a technical architect to do this, all of these in a short duration of time is much higher. So that's the opportunity for building expertise, right? So it's not, it's now a world where you're no longer known as expert on a particular product alone. You need to understand the technology breadth that each of these product companies provide, and also their ecosystem, because you don't have to custom build a lot of them. If you take the ecosystem, there are other providers who are there, some paid, some free services, which you might want to have a point of view on when to advise what to clients, because you don't want to build a lot of complicated code on the cloud when there is something that is out of the box that is already available. So then the technology architect's need right now is much different than what it was in the past. So the roles are immense in this space, if you see, but the person who is considered an expert is someone who can grow broader and have a wider understanding. And, like my boss puts it, it's like a T. You expand breadth-wise, but you are an expert in one area, right? So that's the kind of demand that we are seeing. On the business analyst side, in this topic, we specifically chose two roles, the technology architect and the business analyst, because that's where a number of us play a key role, or we manage solutions where we need these kind of skills, apart from the rest of the team that does development and testing and the others. But the key players are these two people that you bring. And that is in the context of doing all of these in a very short time span, being more closer to what business needs, and working within a budget. So a business analyst has to understand the technology offerings to be able to innovatively propose solutions that meets the client's business requirements and their budgets and the timelines. So understanding what collaborative functionality, what mobility, the ecosystem, what is out of the box is required both from the business analyst and the technology architect. Now the technology architect, like I told you, often has to wear multiple hats. So if you want to build expertise, now you have to look beyond, apart from building, going deep in one area. So that's more of the SaaS area, and we have immense opportunity here to grow, and much more challenging kind of work to do as well. With that, please make a note of your questions and put it in the fishbowl outside. We really look forward to some engaging discussions on this topic later in the